I don't even know what the word you'd call it, but it wasn't seen on that end. And I think because to some extent it plays into that narrative. And we've tried to be completely neutral on both shows. I invite you to please go back and watch the video with Richard Carrier and see if we acted any differently. We did not. I think this is a really sad display from some that I'd expected better from. So that's all I'm going to say about that. And Steve, you can now go into your super chats.
Okay. And yeah, I know very little about this topic. I'm the first person to admit I don't read the Bible very much. I don't study it. I don't have the expertise by any stretch of imagination to dive into any of these topics with any type of confidence whatsoever. That's why I want to listen to the people that have, and I want to evaluate their arguments. I find nothing wrong with that. That's, I think, what an open-minded person does. I don't have the expertise to contest them or to even accept them. I just am listening and asking questions like any rational human being would. But with that, Pragmatic Culture, $10. We do have contemporary references in the form of pseudonymous. I can't pronounce even the words. Pseudonymous? Is that how you pronounce it? Pseudonymous? Okay. And the Roman tax documents. Dating is a bit off from typical timeline, but only by about a decade or two. Not a huge deal to the whole story. So I think you mentioned a little bit earlier.
I'm not quite sure. I'm not sure who the person that they're saying we have references to. Oh, Cyrenius, right. Quirinus.
Sure.
Is that what it is, Steve? Okay.
Suetonius. Suetonius.
Oh, Suetonius.
Yes.
Suetonius.
Suetonius.
Okay.
Suetonius. I guess.
I'm not sure what they think Suetonius is a contemporary attestation for. We've got some Roman tax documents from Egypt. And we've got them in Egypt because Egypt has a very dry climate, and Roman tax documents in that area were written on papyrus. And so it's just a fluke that we actually have some Roman tax documents from that area. But all that shows is how little we have from everywhere else. Why you'd get any mention of Jesus in the tax document in Egypt, I have absolutely no idea. All that shows is what I was saying is true. No,
would it show he paid taxes?
Well, that just shows that just shows that we've got fuck all. No, almost certainly not. You had to be a landowner. You had to be a landowner to pay taxes.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. Makes sense. That makes a lot more sense. Yeah, that's true. Gallus Engineer, $5. There's no such Suetonius documents. Suetonius doesn't prove Jesus existed. Well, I don't think anything proves one way or another whether he existed. I mean, we're not really, nothing of these things confirm. We're looking at the overall picture, right? Pragmatic Culture, $2. Probability, yeah, and I have no problem with that. That's why I don't think Carrier's approach is necessarily bad. I just don't find it convincing by any such imagination. Yeah, I think it's not a great argument for the non-existence of Christ, if you want my honest opinion. But Pragmatic Culture, $2, and neither does Carrier, I think. Ad Gallus Cranium, or GC, is that Gallus Cranium? I don't know. He absolutely does see lives of the 12 Caesars. I'm not sure. I don't know what that means. He absolutely does see lives of the 12 Caesars. Must be a reference to something.
Suetonius is the writer of the lives of the 12 Caesars. I'm not quite sure the context, so I don't quite know what's being argued.
Like I said, I know nothing about this stuff. I am fully inept in this field. I have no compunctions to admit that outright. I think that we need to admit when we have no knowledge of this different topics. I don't ever read any of this stuff. Nothing I dive into at all. I just don't have an interest.
I must admit that disagreement is not bashing. Disagreement does not equal bashing.
Not at all. Yeah. No, I can definitely disagree with people. I happen to like Richard Carrier. I actually really like the guy. Doesn't mean I'm convinced by his arguments.
That's why I'm able to sit here and listen to both of them put their points up. Like, I don't understand where
I have no idea.
Venom comes from.
It's weird to me too. Pragmatic Culture, $2. This quote firmament stuff seems like Gnostic BS. Goddess Engineer, $5. Paul heavily emphasizes that he did not get his information from any man, only Scripture and Revelation. That's a good point. What do we think?
Okay, just on that one, I mean, Paul makes several comments along those lines. Paul says, I didn't get my teaching from any man. I got my teaching from Jesus, and he's talking about his visions of Jesus because he says that he had visions of Jesus. What you have to do, though, is you have to look at that comment in context. So he's making that point in several places, particularly in Galatians 1, where he's trying to argue against people who are saying, don't listen to that Paul guy. He got his teachings from us, the original followers of Jesus, and their followers. And so he's subordinate to us. And so in that context, what Paul is saying is, no, I didn't get my teaching from any of those guys. I got my teaching purely from Jesus. Then he says, of course, I did go to Jerusalem after I converted, and I did meet with Peter, and I did meet with Jesus' brother James, or James, the brother of the Lord. And so he kind of undercuts the argument that he's making. So to take his argument at face value and considering he's using a bit of rhetoric and say he says he didn't get his teaching from anyone, he's saying that in context because he's trying to counter an argument. When you look at it in the context, it's pretty clear that he did get at least some of his teaching from other people, because he refers to them. He says to people who were apostles before me, and he admits he actually met with them. And it's pretty clear that he's over protesting when he's saying that he got it purely from his visions of Jesus.
Gotcha.
I don't find that very convincing.
01321326666. What is the positive evidence that Jesus existed? Well,
we didn't quite get to that. Unfortunately, we didn't quite get to that.
We know.
Yeah.
This is how frustrated I got, by the way.
You broke your glasses?
I broke my glasses.
Broke your glasses, man.
Yep.
Jeez.
Yep.
That's not.
Well, look, I just touched on one piece, and the thing is, there's nothing that's a slam dunk. But what we have is some references that really only kind of make sense if the guy did exist.
In light of him.
Yeah, that's right. So, for example, Paul saying, I didn't meet with any of those guys in Galatians. I didn't meet with any of those guys. Oh, I did meet with Cephas, though. Cephas is the Aramaic form of the name Peter. And I did meet with James, the brother of the Lord. Now, we know from other sources, both Christian and non-Christian, that Jesus had a brother called James. Here's Paul saying, I went to Jerusalem, I met with Peter, that's Cephas, that's Jesus' friend, and the brother of the Lord, James. Now, mythicists have to tie themselves in enormous knots to try and come up with a way in which brother of the Lord doesn't mean the brother of the Lord. And I've written a whole quite complicated argument where I go through the problems with the way in which they do that. Most people, pretty much everyone, apart from the 5 or 6 mythicists amongst the scholarship, read brother of the Lord as James, the brother of Jesus. It's hard to have a brother who Paul can meet if he didn't fucking exist.
If he didn't exist.
So,
right, no, I agree with that. And do you think, I have 2 quick questions, then the last super chat, and then we got to end this. But do you think that because the topic is so ingrained in humanity about the divinity of Jesus that it's very hard for people to be dispassionate and separate how we would treat his existence as opposed to any other historical figure? And I think that's exactly one of the issues is that, I think that's a very, and I understand that it is emotional for some people, and I think it's very difficult to be dispassionate. But I see people saying things that it's disconcerting to me when I see people say things like, well, Tim came on and for the last 2 hours never gave any evidence by Richard Carey was wrong. I have to fully disagree. He presented an argument of why Richard's wrong. You can be convinced by it or you can't, but I don't think you're being intellectually honest by saying Tim did not present counter arguments. He most certainly did explain why he believed Richard's not wrong. He spent 2 hours doing it. I listened to his words. I was paying attention. I'm doing 4 different things, but I still was listening, and he was clearly explaining why he felt Richard was wrong. Now, you can agree with him. You can disagree with him. You can say he's full of shit and try to explain why you disagree with him. But to say that he didn't sit here and make arguments why Richard was wrong is just fucking ridiculous. I'm at a loss.
It was just honestly. It was whipped up in the beginning, and
my goodness. All right, that's my little rant. Sorry, but Pragmatic Culture, $2. Last thing. Free for all after show. Let the peasants be heard. I don't have the wherewithal, dude. If anybody else wants to, God bless them.
I just had 3 shows right here.
Yeah, this is enough for me.
I was trying to pay attention to Tim, and then there was like 6 different shows happening in the live chat and the side conversations. But at the end of the day,
I could say is, sorry, mate. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say what I said at the beginning, which is, of course, I'm not going to be able to counter mythicism in 2 hours. Of course I'm not. I couldn't even get, I got about 3/4 of the way through the material I wanted to present, which just shows how complex this stuff is. But what I tried to do is sort of take some examples of what are some of the key problems with mythicism. And the absolute critical one is the fact that it depends on a supposition for which there is not any evidence that there was this proto-Christianity that believed in a non-historical Jesus. There's no evidence for that. And the bits that they try and use to bolster that idea have to be propped up with, excuse the French, but fucking bullshit like the cosmic sperm bank idea. I mean, seriously. You have to be working pretty hard to believe this idea to accept an argument like that. It's crap.
It's a little bizarre. Let me throw this out so Kyle can end this. Let me just leave it on this, because both groups are asking about evidence. They're saying Richard needs evidence, you need evidence, blah, blah, evidence. You know what? Put in the comments what evidence you expect to see, because I don't know what the fuck all people are talking about, what they expect for evidence. You gave your opinion and you gave reasoning about why you think he's wrong. Right? I don't know what evidence they're expecting you to give besides what you related that anybody can go look up to see the veracity of. That's fucking evidence. I don't know what they're asking for. I'm sorry.
Stop being so sensitive.
I don't get it.
Stop being so sensitive. We all like Richard Carrier. We get that. As atheists, we like Richard Carrier. I get that. I like Richard Carrier. Steve likes Richard Carrier.
I really
I also like Tim. And
I really liked him.
My feelings towards each of these gentlemen matters zero to what we were here to talk about. And that's the thing that I think we're getting lost on. We're trying to pick teams behind the people and not what the people are saying. And that is the biggest issue that I have seen tonight. Bashing does not mean that it's not the same thing as questioning somebody's stances or arguments. It doesn't work. It doesn't work that way. And at the end of the day, I'll end with, and Tim, I'll let you have the last word, but how I started out. What does it matter? Why are you getting so emotionally invested? Why are you having a conundrum and losing your shit over whether a man 2,000 years ago and whether he died or he didn't die? It doesn't.
Oh.
Oh, we lost him.
I lost Kyle XE.
Kyle.exe crashed.
God's smiting him. Well, let me finish I'll finish the question for him, and it's a good question. Is why did it matter? Now, granted, I think I know your answer because you're a historian and you think you want to be historically correct, and I think that's admirable. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to answer along those lines, I'm going to support you. But why is this important, one way or another?
Sure. First of all, I need to correct you. I'm not a historian. I'm an amateur, and there are too many people on the internet claiming expertise that they don't have. I've got a
you're a guy that likes
history, but not a postgraduate. Yeah, I've got a
but you like history. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But why do I care? I care because I am actually very interested in history, and I'm also, as I said earlier, I'm interested in bad historical arguments, and I don't think this is the worst, but I don't think it's a very good one. And I think the reason a lot of people are invested in this argument has nothing to do with reason or rationality. All the people who are talking about evidence before, evidence gets thrown around in this discussion the way that theory gets thrown around in creationism discussions. Those people who are asking for evidence, what they seem to be asking for is proof. Well, if you want proof, or most things in ancient history, all I'm going to say is you're out of luck. Well, that's not how it works. What we have is source material. And what we have to do is we have to try and interpret that source material to work out what is most likely to have happened. That's all we can do. That's all Carrier does. Not very well, I'd argue, but that's what he does, and that's all I'm doing. That's all anyone who looks at this question does. So if you want a slam dunk piece of proof, it's not going to happen, guys. And it won't happen on most things to do with ancient history. So it's what is most likely. And I'd finish by saying it is far more likely that there was a Jewish apocalyptic preacher who got crucified and his followers dealt with that by saying he's the Messiah, he's risen from the dead, and he's coming back soon. And Christianity came from that. Unfortunately, I didn't get to the point where I could sort of explain how that stuff about the apocalyptic preacher means that it's most likely Jesus existed. Maybe, I don't know, if you can bear it. Maybe I can do that again.